All right, moving on still on the same, on April 30th, U.S. Congress Committee Chairman Michael McGaul and Ranking Member Gregory Meeks asked House Speaker Mike Johnson to formally invite Kenya's President William Samoei Ruto to address the joint session of Congress during his May 2024 visit to the United States. A foreign president being invited to speak to a joint session of the Congress is a diplomatic honor vested from Congresses. It is also adds to the prestige of the White House's invitation for a state visit to the president. On the legislative front, the House Speaker's invitation to a foreign heads of state accords the foreign executive the rare and unique platform to speak directly to 535 politicians that make up the legislative arms of the American government, 435 in the House of Representatives and 100 in U.S. Senate. It also gives Ruto access to the high-ranking committee members in the House and Senate who will be amicable to call for political, economic, defense and diplomatic support from Kenya. It accords Ruto a free and expansive press in U.S. and international media space while raising his profile in Kenya and the African continent as a global player on the international stage. Bushebi Jr. explains.
U.S. is sending a message to Africa that they have confidence in the leadership of President William Ruto. And they have confidence in the government of President William Ruto. This is not the first time they are doing it. We've seen the U.S. ambassador doing that job very well right here. Even talking to Raila Odinga and telling him, punguza imaneno, wacha nani aongoze. Wewe tutaangalia mambo yako. So you've seen U.S. showing a lot of confidence in the government of President William Ruto. And this is one way of doing that. And that is why you've seen the president, ditching his narrative against the dollar and holding on to the climate change narrative and backtracking on the issue of Pan-Africanism and stuff like that. So it's a show of confidence. Another thing is that because it's a show of confidence, America is looking for a strong African ally. A strong African ally. Because Egypt right now is unsure of its position in Middle East, especially during this crisis where Hamas and Israel is fighting. Egypt does not know exactly where it's standing because there's Iran there fighting, there's Hamas, there's a threat of the Red Heifer, the political scene in Middle East has almost rendered Egypt, unsure of its standing. So Egypt as an African country, as an ally to US, is quite shaky. When you look at South Africa, which is another superpower in Africa, you would see that South Africa has already declared its stand. It's against the United States of America. Yes. It has been pro-Russia.
Yes.
And doesn't want anything to do with America because America supports Israel. So in Africa, Egypt is unsure of its standing. South Africa is against United States. In fact, South Africa outrightly supports Hamas and the Palestinians.
Yes.
And so that tells you. So let's go to Nigeria, another superpower. Nigeria has been backsliding on its democratic space. We've seen a lot of coup coming out of there, and ECOWAS cannot do anything. And when you go to the north of Nigeria, there's almost terrorism every day. So Nigeria itself cannot handle its own problems. So it's not one of the best allies to United States. So the only country that remains that can make the best of allies to the United States in Africa is Kenya. And that is why United States has to do everything and anything to make Kenya its ally. Kenya has always been pro-US. Kenya has always been pro-Israel. And so that makes Kenya just the best of ally for America. And I think coming from this background is where now they want to elevate President William Ruto to a position where he's respected globally and the relationship with America just stands out. So whenever America wants to do something in Africa, they have a landing position in Kenya, which is a strong landing position. Remember in Middle East, America only has Israel as its landing pad. In Africa, America is looking at Kenya as its landing pad, because you've already disqualified Nigeria, we've already disqualified South Africa, we've already disqualified Egypt. So we're only remaining with Kenya. Kenya, is the fourth almost biggest economy. Kenya is big. So Kenya now becomes the ally to the US. And Kenya is pro-US. Even while Israel was beating up and bombing Hamas, President William Ruto came in support of Israel, but condemning the bombing, but in support of Israel.
Yes.
When President William Ruto, then the deputy president, wanted to become president, there was a horn somewhere on the Temple Mount in Israel. In Jerusalem, there are some Jews who went there and blew up that horn and said, we are now declaring President William Ruto the president of Republic. Mungu ameongea. I don't know if you remember that time. And so you can see the relationship. If you're pro-Israel, you're pro-US. There's no way around it. If you're pro-US, you're pro-Israel. And so in Africa right now, the only country that the US can rely on as an ally is Kenya. And that is why President William Ruto is being given this privilege to address the joint house, Congress House, bicameral house, that's the Senate and House of Representatives in the United States of America. If the Speaker will send the formal invitation, well and good for President William Ruto, but we know this is now global politics. Yes.
Are there any benefits of him addressing the House?
Of course, there are benefits. We've already seen the benefits. President William Ruto has already been given too much loans in dollars. So this is one president who's overborrowed in 6 months than previous presidents in 2 years. And so there's already, in fact, he's been supported so much. Others would have died economically. And, so there are benefits. Benefits are there. The president has talked about sending 200,000 Kenyans out of the country to work. Where exactly do you think they are going? There's a market